All right, so we're going to start working on actually texturing now our assets. And the first one that we're going to do is this wood shader right here. And we're going to start getting into these modified and generated tile level textures. So generate is the one I'm going to be mostly focusing on, which is basically we take a tile level texture and then we generate our bumps, roughness, all those types of map from that. This is going to be the final result that we're going to work in. We're primarily going to be working on building roughness maps and bump maps. So this is going to be more of a finished wood. It's not like a raw wood. It's, somebody has put some finishing material over top of this. So it's going to be nice and shiny. But yeah, we're going to still see the bumps and the roughness to that. So before we get in, I want to show you guys textures.com. We've been using 3D textures.me, which is great. The benefit of using, a texture website that you have to pay for is going to be searchability. If we search for something like wood here with textures.com, and we just simply scroll through here, we'll get a bird's eye view of tons of different types of wood. And up here is going to be all of our, PBR style stuff. But the vast majority of the stuff that I still use today are going to come from just single texture images. So these right here, they're not going to have bump maps generated. They're not going to have roughness maps generated. They're just going to be straight photos that can be used as a base to generate those. That's the vast majority of the textures that I grab from online these days. If we go to 3dtextures.me and we simply search for something like, wood, for example, it's going to be a lot harder to find these types of things. And that's really the pros and cons of this. Other than that, it's just going to be scale. They do have like sections here, which allows you to find it pretty easily. But even then, you have to kind of like dig through it. They really kind of try to get as much ad revenue as possible. Just simply going click to click, page to page. So it's a little bit more of a hassle. So I use this. This is not me saying that you guys should be using this, just showing you what I use primarily. So I'm just going to name this metal, and then we're going to hide this. And then I'm just going to drop in a plane and go ahead and bring this up. Go ahead and zoom in on this and get this rendering. So we'll just do a new material. We'll just go ahead and call this wood, and we'll go ahead and get our texture maps brought in. In our starter kit downloads under textures, I have this wood texture that's going to be ready for us. So I'm just going to go ahead and drag and drop this in, and I'm going to go ahead and plug this in right there. So right off the bat, you can see here that there's a lot to be desired. And this is, classic, just getting started with texture and results, where you just kind of plug in a color map and you're kind of like wondering why it looks so bad, right? So the two maps that we primarily want to focus on most of the time is getting a good roughness map and getting a good bump map. So right now, this is set to sRGB. And if we want to plug this into any of these other maps, we want it to be set to non-color. But the problem is right now we have essentially one texture node. So if we simply bring in another texture node, if we simply copy and paste this, for example, if we switch this to raw or non-color, both of these colors change right there. And that's a problem. So essentially, this is kind of a weird thing with Blender. Most other 3D packages don't do this for you. It's because it's actually bringing in the same wood one time, not twice. The workaround I found for this is just simply duplicate that one texture. So this is just the same texture duplicated. It's a bit of a hack, but easy solution. So I'm just Shift A here and then bring in an image texture, and then I'm going to bring in the other wood, which is essentially the same wood. We're just going to set this to be non-color. And the way I usually like to work with this is I like to work on just a roughness and just a bump and without looking at the base color, so I can actually see what they're doing. And what I'm going to do here is just simply bring this color down just like that. And then what I'm going to do is plug this directly into roughness. And you'll see right off the bat, okay, we're getting some pretty decent results, but we want to control this a little bit better, right? And the node that I use to control this better a lot is the ramp node. So Shift A and then search and then ramp. And I'm just going to drag and drop this over top like this and connect that up. I'm going to move my hotkeys up here to kind of get those out of the way. So the benefit of this ramp now, it gives us ability to essentially run a levels tool to be able to crunch this back and forth, right? And we can get these really organic looking roughness maps just by, crunching the black and white values. And we can always do things like this, which is flip it back and forth. So the white is lower and the black is higher, which is always a good result. And this just gives us some really nice organic breakup. We generally speaking don't want this to go too extreme. We want this to not to be all the way white and all the way black. So we want to keep this somewhere, you know, below, above, you know, black, and then below white as well. And if we want to actually see this map directly, all we have to do is hit Control Shift on the color ramp. So now we can see this map directly without actually going through the shader add-on that we added before. So I can simply go from like wood, I can see this directly, and then click this, and then click that. So I can see them all one by one. So the more you work with this one by one by one, the better. So I'm going to play around with crunching this and go back and forth here. You can see, okay, maybe that's a little bit too shiny. So what we'll do is we'll take this black value and kind of lift it up so it's a little bit more broad like that. Somewhere right in there. So this is going to be just generally to your eye. Trying to get something that looks organic. So not too bad. And then in the next chapter, what we'll do is we'll start taking a look at the bump mapping.